Breaking news. Last night, in the darkness of the Sea of Japan, a Russian submarine opened fire on what it believed to be a United States Navy aircraft carrier, only to discover, seconds later, that its target was nothing more than a humble supply ship, legitimate defense, or an unforgivable mistake that could have unleashed a global war. Subscribe if you believe Russia was right in trying to destroy an American vessel. Was it an act that might have triggered something worse? We will reveal never-before-seen footage of what happened. At 3:45 hours on September 1st, darkness reigned in the Sea of Japan when two Russian submarines, an aging Oscar II and a modern Yasen, slid beneath the surface with the precision of a scalpel. The silence inside the subs was broken only by the electric hum of propulsion systems and the faint murmur of auxiliary turbines. In the Oscar II's combat room, Captain Fyodor Volkov, with more than 20 years of service in the Pacific Fleet, watched the sonar monitors with an unreadable expression. Before him, multiple acoustic echoes traced the silhouette of what, according to preliminary calculations, appeared to be a U.S. carrier strike group, two Arleigh Burke destroyers, a Ticonderoga cruiser, and, at its center, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. From the bridge of the USS Curtis Wilbur, just 100 kilometers of depth above its keel, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Reynolds inserted the last data card into the Aegis system. On board, the daily surveillance routine had been underway for hours. South Korean Navy Skyhawk fighters had taken off at dawn. Japanese patrol vessels were ahead, and U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon aircraft were flying at high altitude. Yet this stretch of sea felt unusually empty. Sonar operators had gone some time without picking up the usual murmur of civilian submarines or deep-sea fishing boats. An anomaly that, with tensions running high between Washington and Moscow, was unsettling. At 3:49, a sonar officer aboard the Oscar II detected two fast contacts aft. Two targets at 2,500 meters, bearing 215, he reported tensely. Volkov nodded and instructed the torpedo operator to prepare two 650mm T-65 torpedoes, known in NATO as monsters, capable of piercing an aircraft carrier's hull with a single strike. The HMS Smith, a modern British destroyer on joint mission with the U.S. Navy, wasn't in the area, but aboard the Curtis Wilbur. 10 seconds after the launch order, alarms rang out in a metallic roar. "Cut emergency fuel lines and execute evasive maneuver," Reynolds shouted to the helmsman. The destroyer swung hard to port, leaning at 35 degrees while sailors rushed to battle stations. In the depths, the Russian torpedoes left their tubes, shedding a trail of bubbles and high-pressure wake. But there was a problem. The sea's thermal layers and shifting currents distorted the Oscar's sonar readings. Instead of a 333-meter Nimitz-class carrier, the actual target was a U.S. Navy supply ship, lacking a flight deck and measuring just 230 meters, escorted by two Arleigh Burke destroyers on a logistics mission. Moments after the torpedoes were fired into the darkness, a chill of uncertainty spread through the Oscar II's combat room. Intelligence operators, trained to interpret every underwater reverberation, frowned as they compared the latest data. Neither the radar signature relayed through the comms buoy nor the acoustic profile captured by hydrophones matched the massive, distinctive echo of a Nimitz carrier. The silhouette, clear seconds before, now blurred under their instruments. Captain Volkov, rigid in his command chair, felt the muscles in his face tighten. That flicker of error, internal yet undeniable, cast a sepulchral silence over the control center. With restrained urgency, he ordered his first officer to prepare the reversal procedure, a surgical maneuver involving a coded acoustic pulse, designed to reprogram torpedo trajectories and force self-deactivation. They had only seconds. Once ejected, torpedoes sped on inertia. Any delay or imprecision in the command meant they would travel their final meters unstoppable, unleashing catastrophe. On the control panel, green lights began flashing as the submarine systems officer typed the shutdown sequence. Every millisecond mattered. The Oscar II had to sync the acoustic transmission with the torpedo's reception window, a dance of bits and sound waves where failure meant disaster. In the tense atmosphere, the dull roar of the electric reactors echoed like a war drum. All eyes were fixed on the deactivation progress bar. This was the decisive instant, a perfect pulse or a fatal mistake. On the Curtis Wilbur's deck, searchlights swept the surface for wake fragments. A sailor peered through an infrared periscope and spotted two metallic glints below. Captain Reynolds, steady-voiced, ordered acoustic countermeasures. Nixie decoys streamed out long cables carrying sound generators to mimic the ship's own noise, luring away sound-guided enemy torpedoes. Meanwhile, in the Oscar II's engine room, First Lieutenant Igor Petrov frantically typed the remote shutdown sequence, an old Soviet-era function rarely used in real combat. The system chirped. Command received. Proceeding to deactivation, the two torpedoes slowed, impotent, and began to sink toward the seabed, trailing clouds of sediment. The echo of contradictory orders rippled undersea, and aboard the Yasen, stationed 5 miles away at 200 meters deep, the crew jolted as command signals abruptly weakened. This submarine, pride of Russia's Pacific Fleet, armed with P-800 Onyx cruise missiles with a 300-kilometer range, was on high alert to deliver lethal support. Launchers calibrated, fire systems ready. Each officer mentally rehearsed attack procedures. But when Volkov's message, "Immediate cessation of all offensive action," came through clearly on the encrypted console, silence filled the combat room. No one dared question the order. Weapons Officer Lieutenant Igor Medvedev simply nodded and pressed the fire shutdown sequence. Within seconds, launch tubes sealed and firing systems locked, halting any attack initiative. That pause, tense and uncertain, showed the power of naval discipline. In a moment of maximum tactical stress, obedience prevailed over aggression. Control panel lights shifted from flashing red, ready to fire, to steady green. System inactive. Outside, the pressurized sea crushed against the hull, reminding all that a single misfired torpedo could have triggered global tragedy. On the Curtis Wilbur's bridge, Reynolds received the ceasefire message, a coded transmission relayed from the Oscar II via acoustic buoy. It read, "Target misidentified. No hostilities intended." In the destroyer's war room, officers exchanged wary glances. Was it a Russian trap? A lure for ambush? The commander hesitated, then chose to trust the message and ordered defensive maneuvers suspended. At that moment, hangar doors opened and an MH-60R Seahawk roared out of the Curtis Wilbur. Chief Lieutenant Emily Carter adjusted her night vision visor and lowered a dipping sonar beneath the keel. On her multifunction screen, two faint trails grew clearer. The disabled torpedoes sinking slowly into the dark. Carter's stomach clenched. Had the shutdown command not been sent, those warheads would have struck with devastating accuracy. She remembered NATO drills in the North Atlantic, years of training under the "don't fire without confirmation" rule. Every acoustic echo was a life-or-death decision, but she had never faced something this real. Calmly, she reported, "Torpedoes neutralized, no immediate threat." A collective sigh of relief swept the crew as the rotor blades eased. It was clear, beyond missiles and Aegis technology, it was human discipline and precise protocols that prevented disaster. The sea had shown that even the deadliest weapon can be stopped by a single command, and that prudence remains the best ammunition against war. With the first rays of sunlight over the horizon, Allied ships slowed patrols and kept eyes on the last known contact points. South Korean and Japanese naval forces tightened surveillance and shared sonar data. On land, the Pentagon activated its National Crisis Center, while Russia's General Staff in Vladivostok summoned Admiral Stanislav Korolev to report the impromptu action. Political fallout began immediately. Without a single shot landing, the incident reminded all of the perils of submarine warfare. The Sea of Japan, a crossroads of strategic interests, hosts 4 active navies that rarely share waters without tension. Maritime security analysts called urgently for multilateral protocols to confirm target identities before firing and for joint de-escalation drills. Hours later, Moscow's Ministry of Defense issued a statement. During routine patrol, unidentified vessels resembling a strike group were detected. After torpedo launch, absence of carrier confirmed, and deactivation command executed. No casualties or damage. Measures to reinforce target identification recommended. In Washington, the White House issued a parallel statement, praising the USS Curtis Wilbur crew for swift response and discipline, reaffirming commitment to dialogue with Russia to prevent future incidents. A forensic report revealed that the Oscar II was misled by natural phenomena and data processing failures. Subsurface thermal layers, thermoclines, deflected sonar signals, creating blind spots. Compounding this were ghost echoes, air bubbles from a nearby fishing vessel that reflected signals, simulating a larger hull. These oceanographic effects made operators misclassify the U.S. supply ship as an aircraft carrier. But the confusion wasn't only acoustic. Russian intelligence had recently received low-resolution satellite data showing what seemed to be a large moving naval target. Without high-definition imagery or cross-confirmation, analysts misread incomplete data as proof. Combined with faulty sonar readings, this triggered the launch order. In final recommendations, experts urged urgent updates to identification protocols, deploying interconnected sensor grids with fixed and mobile hydrophones, combined with next-gen quantum satellites for millimeter-resolution imaging. Most innovative was the proposal of a silent radio channel, encrypted acoustic frequencies with minimal interference risk, allowing navies to verify targets in real time by exchanging secure acoustic profiles. Only then, they concluded, could risks of near misses be minimized. The incident, brief as it was, left deep lessons for global naval doctrine. It showed that even advanced hypersonic weapons and integrated combat systems can be undone by a moment's confusion. It underscored the chain of command's importance. A young Russian sonar operator and a U.S. lieutenant interpreted contradictory signals correctly, and their decisions, torpedo shutdown and countermeasure suspension, averted open conflict. By nightfall, the Curtis Wilbur and escorts resumed partial patrols. The Oscar II, joined by the Yasen, crept back to Vladivostok, where crews underwent interrogations and debriefings all night. In both navies' galleys, reports of the phantom battle were traded informally. Over coffee and bread, sailors reflected on how thin the line is between peace and war. Meanwhile, military analysts and diplomats sought to turn the scare into an opportunity for stability in international waters. A proposal emerged for a Maritime Incident Coordination Center under the UN, plus annual large-scale exercises with the U.S. Navy, Russian Navy, Japan's Coast Guard, and South Korea's naval forces. Goal: ensure no sonar misreading ever again brings the world to the brink. Because modern wars are no longer fought only with missiles and torpedoes, but with the precision of information and speed of communication. And in the depths where error can mean catastrophic explosion, the story of the Oscar II and USS Curtis Wilbur stands as proof. When technology fails, humanity, our ability to doubt and correct, remains the last line of defense. In the coming days, experts and diplomats will exchange statements, assess risks, and review every byte of sonar and satellite data. Leave your opinion in the comments. Subscribe to follow each twist in this story, and activate the bell so you don't miss our next report.